Hello, everybody, and welcome to Planet FPL, the world where everything revolves around Fantasy Premier League. My name is Suj.
And my name is James.
It's I'd say bright and early Monday morning. Any time before 10 a.m., let's say, is bright and early and ready to rock and roll. Not a lot of football at the weekend, but still some football, and still FPL marches on. And we pod, James.
Indeed, we do. Only 4 games to review, but we're going to do them possibly in a little bit more detail than what we may normally do. I'm sure will come some refereeing decisions. We're also going to talk about consequences of what may be happening with the Premier League meeting today and what that's potential impact is on FPL fixtures going forward. How was your game week, sir?
I ended up, obviously, I did nothing.
Which needs elaborating on before you say anything else.
Well, we got to Friday night, and we'd obviously podded on Friday, differential show, and that my original plan was to move Antonio to Lacazette, and potentially also move Kyle Walker onto Tierney, or maybe Jared Bowen onto Foden, even as part of a minus. I had a few options on the table as to what I was potentially doing, but nothing in a similar way to how you described the issues with some of these transfers in the differential show. Nothing that really was like, I really want to do this because it's gonna. If there hadn't been any postponements, I wouldn't have been making any of those transfers. Do you know what I mean? So they were a bit forced. Then on Saturday, you obviously did your deadline stream
twice.
I feel like who wants to be a millionaire? Phone a friend. When your phone rings and it's like, it's James. And then, Chris Tarrant used to be like, you're live on air, don't swear. So
I can swear on my streams, mate.
I can on yours, but a couple of times, obviously, you rang me. Firstly, I didn't realize the first game had been called off. I was oblivious to it. I was fixing a vacuum cleaner at the time. So that was interesting. I was going to leave my transfers late. And as soon as that happened, it made me doubt whether the Sunday fixtures could go ahead or how late they were willing to call them off, let's say, if there was going to be a problem. And decided to roll into the week with just 8 players and leave it at that. Giving myself 2 transfers plus willingness to take a hit on Boxing Day, I thought would be fine. The way I looked at it was I'm going to buy 1 or 2 players, right? If those players go off big, what's that going to be, like a 15-pointer and a 5-pointer, 20 points maybe? There's going to be more than ample opportunity to make back 20 points over the course of the season, and keeping my options open felt more sensible when I just had no information about what would happen on the Sunday, particularly.
But you did have information to go and buy an Arsenal player, surely.
Yeah. But I didn't want to force it necessarily. And who would I mean, the 2 that I would have bought, Tierney was the 2-pointer, and Lacazette, they were the two that you bought were the 2 top of my list. I don't think it was wrong to buy them, but I just didn't feel that pressing need. Like Lacazette and Tierney, what's the best case scenario for them, I thought, was 15 or 20 points. And worst case was maybe just
I think that best case scenario meant go and buy them.
Nah, for me, it was just a case of I'd rather keep my options open this week and see what happens this week. Ended up doing nothing, and still I came away with 47 points because Mendy and Rudiger double clean sheet, Trent doing what Trent does, Cancelo obviously cleaning up, and then Jota and Salah. Kyle Walker's still MIA. Some information would be nice, but I guess I've given up expecting any information from any press conferences ever again in football. And Manquillo's bench fodder, he didn't end up playing anyway yesterday. So a 0-pointer, that would have been a 0-pointer had he played probably anyway.
That's in true.
Any case.
Yeah.
So to come away with 47 points of 6 players, to be well above the average, which was 39, and still get a red arrow was a little surprising. I didn't expect so many decent scores this week, but I'm happy with the outcome from the weekend, to be honest with you.
That's because the top 10k average was, if you include hits, was near a kind of 55 to 56 points.
Yep.
That's why you got a red arrow, mate.
Yeah.
Because
hang on, just for clarity's sake for the listener, I'm not in the top 10k or near it, but Still, I'm 177k.
No, but that number gives a clearer indication of at least of
the
live teams at the top level of
for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, overall average was 37 or so. I'm sure there's dead teams out there that played this week with 2 or 3 players. It's got to have been, I should imagine.
I've seen a lot of single-digit scores in a few leagues. Yeah, no doubt about it.
It felt like a lot of people's game week was saved by the fact of what games were on. I mean, at the end of the day, the 4 teams who played their games this weekend that were of interest to everybody is what is currently now the Premier League's top 4, right? After Arsenal's victory on Saturday. So a lot of people got treble Liverpool. A lot of people got treble Cities. Quite a few people even like, say, treble Chelsea defence. I'm aware still knocking about and stuff. So people had the treble up of all 3 of those teams. You're on 9. So a lot of people probably went into the weekend probably with, even with only those 4 games on, probably sort of 6-7 players basically. Excuse me. And then obviously able to make 3 transfers or take a few hits to kind of rectify that. I mean, basically in the top 10k, average players playing was 10.5 if you include the double for captaincy. So basically 9.5 players was basically the average around live teams. I mean, we've seen Andy Martin, our Leeds correspondent, absolutely smashing it now into the top 1,000. I think he had a player on the bench. I'm not even sure if he made a transfer. Incredible. So,
yeah.
And well done, Andy. You're smashing it, mate. Some people will have, I know there were people landed with like 3-4 players. What I didn't agree with was in terms of like you saying you obviously rolled the transfer. The one that was making me want to tear what little hair I have out was those who went on the free hit.
Oh,
And you know what? I'm pleased. I'm pleased for those who went on it that those 3 games on Sunday survived. It looked like, I think as the Leeds Arsenal game was approaching, it was like, are any of these games even going to be on tomorrow? And I get that. And I hated it. I hated that people gambled down that way. And I think the game, Live FPL Net said that the average for those on free hitters was like 66, I think.
That's pretty decent.
It is, but then it's
a defensive free hit.
It's only like an 11-point gain on what the average has done anyway.
Yeah, you're right. But when you play it kind of defensively to cover off a blank game week rather than a double game week, you're not going to be looking at the 80s and 90s unless Mo Salah scores 4, which has happened in the past.
Well, obviously you bring Salah into the conversation. The real winners this week are obviously those who didn't captain Mo Salah.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, he is human. We have finally found out that Mo Salah is human.
If you look on Twitter, you would think that every single person captain Cancelo. I can assure you that's not the case. It's just nobody's tweeting their Mo Salah score this week. So well done to Cancelo cappers. That's an awesome return.
My game, a lot is down to playing style as well. FPL playing style. Everybody's different, right? For me, if I'm ever in a 50-50 situation, I'm better off doing nothing. It always seems to work better for me to take a step back and do nothing than to make a snap decision. And so, if I found now more recently, if I feel getting closer to the deadline, I'm forced into a rush decision that I'm not comfortable with, I'm better off doing nothing. And that's what ended up. Your score, sir?
Same as you in the end. I'm 51 minus 4. You scored 47, I think.
That's it, correct.
So same net score. I made 2 transfers in about 5 minutes before the rearranged Saturday deadline, making sure it was as late as possible, buying Kieran Tierney for Tino Livramento and Alexander Lacazette for Ollie Watkins. I've been on Ollie Watkins prior to his returns against Norwich, so I nicked a little bit of value out of him as well. Over 1 million players bought Ollie Watkins in the build-up to game week 18. Astonishing. And I feel sorry for all of you. Except those who were making the transfers on like Tuesday or Wednesday and rushing in early under the circumstance just so they could nick the 0.1 and stuff. Congratulations. Not everybody can wait till the last minute. I understand that people have got life commitments, work commitments and stuff. But I mean, just as it goes now, like really nobody should be making a transfer till I get it. If people want to make a transfer Christmas Eve in the evening, because I don't want to think about it Christmas Day and don't want to think about it Boxing Day morning, great. I understand that. Personally, I'll be making transfers Boxing Day morning. anybody making a transfer between now and Friday night, it's insanity as far as I'm concerned.
Agreed.
Because we don't know where we're at. In terms of buying Tierney and Lacazette, I felt like I'd been speaking about Kieran Tierney every week for about 2 months. It's not been quite that long. And I just felt if the opportunity was there, obvious, go and target Arsenal players. That's the game you know is going to happen. So I bought him. The decision to sell Dallo or Livramento was quite difficult, in all honesty, because Livramento's absolutely nailed, and that's what we feel like we want at the moment. But I want to give Dallo a bit more time to try and work out if he's going to be first choice over Wan-Bissaka or not. I think it's close, but I suspect he's a player I'm probably not going to want. Livramento's value dying, I think, kind of sealed the deal for me. That I knew he was gonna drop off and I was going to get no money out of it. So I'd bought him at 4.2. So taking the 0.1 out of it. Their fixtures are rough, bar game week 21. But I was kind of alerted to the fact that game week 21 is the next possibility for double game weeks. And obviously, suddenly, if their rearranged game with Brentford dropped in there, you'd have Newcastle at home, Brentford at home as a double. But that was the only reason I was keeping. So I decided to cut him off. Once the Villa game was postponed, I basically decided I was going to sell Josh King rather than Emmanuel Dennis, and then move that back to King or another if Dennis goes to the African nations, which it looks like he probably will. It's based on the basis that Dennis played right through the middle against Brentford was my decision on that. It wasn't anything about value or anything. It was about if I'm keeping King and he's playing wide, I'm not sure I want him now. It's Dennis that I want. But once Villa got postponed, it was like, well, the obvious sell here for me is actually to sell back to Ollie Watkins for a number of reasons. One, again, I'd nicked the value out of that. So it was like, great. Oh, and they've got Chelsea next. And that game, I guess, is as likely as any as we stand right now to be postponed next week. Because if Villa have postponed a game on a Saturday and they're in a bad situation, players have got to isolate for 10 days. They're not going to play the Chelsea game. And obviously Chelsea, we were obviously aware that there's an ongoing problem as well right now. So I thought Watkins is the one that's going to go. I did not want to buy Lacazette because I know, and I think everybody who's got Lacazette sitting in their team right now is going, I know I already want to get rid of him.
That was it.
That's why you didn't go.
Well, it's like you got to wake up and look at the 2 Arsenal players in your FPL team.
I'm not bothered about looking at Kieran Tierney now.
And do you know what? Ironically, I mean, you did the right thing because they got Norwich away, assuming the game happens.
That was the clincher, mate.
Fine, right? Get 2 games out of it and then move it off because their fixture run after that is not great. I mean, they got Wolves at home, right? And then they're playing, is it Chelsea and then
City at home and then Tottenham away.
Yeah. So that Wolves game is going to be tough. We saw again defensively, Wolves at the weekend are pretty solid and kept Chelsea out. So I think you've got one more game. Tierney keep 4.7 or 4.8, whichever you bought him at is cheap. But yeah, Lacazette, you can ride the Norwich game and then bin him.
Tierney's a long-term choice as far as I'm concerned until I find out it's double game week 21 and I'm wild carding in game week 21 or something like that.
Yeah.
Which we can't do, is worth saying.
No. I mean, if anything was to happen, if I was
not
to get
bench
news,
boost anyway.
If I was to get news that Kyle Walker's actually injured and out or has had COVID or whatever, I mean, Tierney's the place I would go to. I think he's the best value there at the moment from a defensive point of view.
With Lacazette, it was a case of, and we covered this on the podcast on Friday, it was like the options of forwards, there is nothing. You had Watkins, who I already had, which obviously went by the wayside anyway, Lacazette, Jesus, and everything else. It was like, oh, Jimenez is playing Chelsea, Wilson's playing Man City, Kane's out of form. Where are you going to go with this? The reason I decided to make the move was, again, the clincher is the 2 fixtures, Leeds and Norwich. And if Lacazette finishes the chance that obviously comes to him towards the end of the first half and scores rather than hits it straight at Meslier, suddenly he's looking at like a 12-point return or something and it looks great, and then with Norwich to come. But the intention would be, have him for Norwich and then bomb that off because I just don't think he's an FPL asset. Plus, we look at Arsenal as well. The midfielders are all showing up. You can make a case right now for 4 of them. Odegaard, Martinelli, Saka and Smith Rowe. You could make a case for them in your own way for all of them. The reason I didn't go for any of them rather than go for Lacazette was that I did not want to sell Jared Bowen ahead of Southampton and Watford, if that's what comes for West Ham. That was the clinching decision why I didn't go that way. And I look at that Southampton fixture and I'm pleased that Jared Bowen's still sitting there at the moment, personally.
Let's talk about what might happen this week now. So the Premier League having a meeting today. There was talk about all of the midweek fixtures next week being postponed as a block, but then the Boxing Day fixtures still going ahead. I hate predicting the future when we don't know what's going on, but we are in a bad way with COVID in the UK right now. The cases are in and around 100,000 a day and have been consistently. And I think there's more likelihood of external factors coming to play here and stopping football than perhaps even the Premier League related stuff. There's every chance behind closed doors or footy might have to get stopped.
Yeah, I've told you my opinion that I think January, this is what will happen following the New Year's Day fixtures, that, it'll probably go behind closed doors. So a meeting has been arranged between executives of all 20 Premier League clubs for today with Premier League chairman Richard Masters. There are also scheduled meetings later in the day between all the managers. And there's another one for all the captains of each club as well. So they can kind of put their case across in terms of their own personal opinion. Players will feel different to managers. Managers will feel different to owners. They all get the chance. It's thought that the players and managers ones might get postponed till tomorrow, depending on how long this meeting goes on today, which I think is scheduled for about 1 o'clock. It could be a late night for a few of them, actually. So it's believed one of the ideas that the execs want to take forward, and I think they've got full support of this, obviously, from the managers, is to bin all of game week 20. There's a number of teams who have got to play twice in 2 days, basically, on Sunday on the 26th and again on Tuesday the 28th. And you have to say that at the moment, there is no sense in that being playing that 2 games in 2 days. How many of them second games are going to get called off? Loads of them are going to get called off anyway, you imagine, once they all mix up on Boxing Day. So the thinking is most teams, obviously the non-Carabao Cup teams, have got a week to try and sort their shit out. It makes Brentford quite complicated because they're meant to play Chelsea. Leicester, I think, will probably be okay to play Liverpool, is my understanding, but Liverpool might not be okay to play Leicester. It gets confusing and messy, obviously. But the idea is to postpone all of the game week 20 fixtures and to move that somewhere else. Now, if game week, from an FPL perspective, if game week 20 gets postponed, I think there'll still be a deadline. I don't see how they can move the deadline. And the simple philosophy on it is this. You could say, well, if they're going to move all the fixtures to one place, then surely they just rearrange it so game week 21 becomes game week 20 and so on. But unless we've got the guarantee that that's going to happen by the time that deadline comes round, and when, I don't see how they can move the deadline. Now, if they do decide to move all the fixtures, let's say hypothetically, just into game week 23, when there's that break for the internationals, for example, then we'd be sitting here looking at the possibility that all 20 teams are going to have a double game week together. All 20 teams. I don't know if that's ever happened in FPL history before, but that's what it would have to be. So effectively, what we're actually talking about here is, from an FPL perspective, we're talking about a 38-game season becoming a 37-game season.
Game week season, yeah, for sure. I mean, basically, we see in Sky regularly when there's international breaks, they still have match weeks that are just blank and they roll it through. The only precedent, I mean, it's not really a precedent, but what happened obviously in the first lockdown, when there was no football for however long, was the deadlines still carried on as normal and the game weeks were added on as the end as extra game weeks, whatever numbering format you wanted to call them, whether you're adding pluses or just carrying on counting up into the 40s. The deadline still existed. There were a number of managers like you and me that just kind of left it a little bit, and there was other managers that were actively looking for price rises and gains each week to keep managing their squad, and then we all got a bloody extra wild card anyway. At the moment, I'm with you. I think they won't move that deadline. They'd rather keep it as the deadlines that are all set between now and the end of the season, and yeah, you'll get a bumper double game week. It's not hugely different to what happens sometimes with FA Cups and all of that kind of stuff anyway.
There are a couple of sensible solutions in the immediate, but it is dependent on the situation we're in January, which is a little bit of unknown. A few sensible decisions as far as I'm concerned are we scrap FA Cup replays. That's going to open up a little bit of time in the schedule. We scrap the Carabao Cup semi-finals to the extent that we make it one leg. Whoever's drawn at home, great. You're lucky. You've got a home tie in the semi-final. Just do it. Just do that. One game tie. There's a chance it's going to be behind closed doors anyway, so I don't suppose there's a massive advantage in that. The two-leg Carabao Cup semi-final should have gone years ago. We should move those games to a weekend and have it on a neutral venue and take it back to places like Villa Park, Old Trafford. Give it as a game back to fans, and then play the Premier League game postponed in the midweek afterwards. They should leave it blank that way. So that would create a couple of midweeks. Now, whether the FA will agree to that, I suspect the pressure might be, look, you need to cancel third and fourth round replays. There isn't even a spot in the calendar effectively for fourth round replays. It's a bit of a nightmare. Like if Leicester have an FA Cup fourth round replay, I genuinely would put my hands up to you and go, I don't know when they play it because of their involvement in the Europa Conference League last 32. Not a clue. So scrapping those replays, I went over this on my deadline stream. I know that smaller clubs is disadvantageous to them because they'll lose the replay money and all that. I get that, but there's every chance they'll win the game on penalties and go through to a next round and earn even more money. I think we need to make some room in the calendar. It's going to be this is eventually going to be a problem for EFL clubs as well, I'm sure. Moving one of the Carabao Cup dates and making it one leg, that opens up more time as well, obviously, to throw a whole group of fixtures in there. We've got this break at the end of January for international games. Now, there's no European teams playing. The sensible solution has got to be to say, well, we're not doing that now. Games are going in there. And for clubs like Tottenham, who've got, say, quite a number of South American players and stuff, it's going to be this. You're going to miss your South American players. It is what it is. And games are going to go in there, I think. And it may even be that game week 23 becomes like treble game week for certain teams and stuff. I don't think that's impossible. Further afield, for the non-European teams, it's easy to fit the fixtures in. For the European teams, it's an absolute nightmare. It's part why Chelsea have already got these Brighton Arsenal games to rearrange. I know they wanted the Wolves game off, but where's the game going to go? All you've got in terms of availability is game week 33, which is basically blocked in terms of free midweek after FA Cup semi-finals. You got game week 36 is completely free, and game week 37 in between 37 and 38 is also basically free, although Europa League final is scheduled there. And I doubt UEFA will want Premier League having games clashing with that particular fixture as it's a European final. So non-European teams, easy to work out, or well, not easy to work out. Games could go anywhere. There's no rush. But for the clubs in Europe, bit of a mare. And I don't know if we're going to get any information before this weekend. I genuinely think we could be in a situation where suddenly we look at, oh my God, everyone's got a double game week like next week. 21 is a possibility. It could even be that they go 21. You got the full program of fixtures. You have the Carabao Cup semi-finals the midweek afterwards. The FA Cup third round fixtures the weekend after that, and then Premier League fixtures the midweek after that. And that would still be part of game week 21, a massive double with a 10-day stretch between two effective game weeks in one game week. 23 is obviously a possibility as well. Those are the only two immediate ones in terms of the possibility of all 20 teams doubling. And as I said, if we get loads of fixtures thrown into 23 and they don't move the deadlines, I'm pretty sure there'd be the teams with trebles. Pretty sure. So just something to be aware of. And on wild card, obviously, game week 21 is the first instance to be able to use the second wild card. Now, you can't obviously wild card and bench boost in the same week. But if 21 suddenly did have 20 teams doubling, you're going to want to use bench boost, don't you? Surely. So,
or free hit as an aggressive use of your free hit.
You could do, but I mean, having all 20 teams together, all playing, if you've got the 15 playing players, I think you activate it, don't you? The bench boost.
Yeah.
And then 23, if it was to happen that way, you might look at it differently if certain teams, perhaps European teams, like are going to have trebles and stuff. The one that probably wouldn't is Chelsea because of their Club World Cup involvement, although that's after the FA Cup fourth round. But I reckon, I'm pretty sure there's two sets of fixtures they could chuck into that period. Let me just have a quick check, Suj. So you've got game week 23 ends on Sunday the 23rd.
Correct.
FA Cup fourth round starts on Friday the 4th, effectively. So that's what, 2 weeks later, 2 weekends later. So, I mean, in theory, you could even be a quadruple. It's extremely unlikely. But if they did so right, everybody's rearranged fixtures goes into that period. It seems folly to kind of rush to rearrange things at the moment.
But we also don't know what trouble is further down the horizon.
No, but you would think that the sensible solution, I would think right now to look at it would be, if you're going to move a whole set of fixtures and you've got a weekend sitting there, Saturday the 30th of January, move game week 20 into that weekend, which is after game week 23. Then that's a double for everyone. And you could, in the midweeks between there, if we're saying, look, we're going to play football during these rest of the world internationals, then in theory, teams could have trebles, possibly even a quadruple. How would that even look on the screen? You'd have the fixtures overlapping over the players beneath and stuff, wouldn't you? I'm imagining it.
Mad.
It could mean,
and more.
I mean, from an FPL perspective, it all sounds very exciting. Am I saying it's going to happen? I haven't got a clue. I'm just making you aware of that possibility.
Let's talk about some of these games. Well, there's only 4 at the weekend, and kind of sort of played out mostly as we expected. Arsenal 4-1 away at Leeds. Leeds obviously now then conceding 11 goals in the week, and not in a good way at all.
Lucky it was only 11.
Then is it just not in a good way at all?
I mean, if Arsenal had been 7-1.
Who's next for them, by the way?
Yeah.
Brutal.
He said, someone asked me last night, he said, is it time to sell Salah? I said, you want to look at the fixtures, mate.
Oh, dear.
I think we all feel for them at the moment. A little, well, not everyone will, but a lot of us do, because of the state of that injury list at the moment. I mean,
it's horrible.
The irony is they've got the most injuries in the league and the only team that can't catch COVID. They would have only needed a handful of players contracting COVID, and I think we think Llorente might have contracted. With some rumours about Luke Ayling, but he played anyway. They basically had anybody of able body that could play. Your mate Cock out. Well, no, he wasn't. It was Cock in, wasn't he? But he wasn't meant to play. He hadn't done a lot of training, been out for 2 months and stuff, and they threw him straight in, because even Charlie Cresswell was meant to play at centre back, and he had to pull out as well. So I think Cresswell was going to play, and Cock probably wasn't even going to be in the squad. And they looked at him, you've got to play, mate. And he's played, and he was at fault for a couple of the goals and stuff. He wasn't the only one.
Yeah. So
a bit of a mess. Drama at right back, not ready. Midfield, you look at like Click and Roberts behind Gelhardt, and you go, and I know Gelhardt's a good young talent and stuff. That is so weak. Watching the game, and I obviously want them to do well because they're playing Arsenal, and it's just like, just give the ball to Rafinha, give the ball to Rafinha, give the ball to him, something might happen. Otherwise, you're looking at them going, you are miles off of this level.
And even the game after Liverpool, they've got Aston Villa, rejuvenated under Steven Gerrard. I reckon Villa will do them quite comfortably as well. It's why
if it happens.
Of course, I mean, that's the asterisk on everything, but I think it's why holding Ollie Watkins for me, I'm looking one game further ahead to that Leeds game.
You would, yeah. No. If you didn't sell Watkins on Saturday, you would. And to be fair, Villa have really good fixtures, basically up until around about game week 28 anyway. So I'm not saying I won't go back for him, by the way, mate. It was just, with me buying Lacazette as well, it opened the door back up if I want to go back to Ronaldo. Whereas holding Watkins was going to make it really awkward. So I could make that call nearer the deadline on Boxing Day in terms of opening it back up for Ronaldo if I want to go that way, or Heung-min Son even as an alternative as well. Whereas having Watkins and Lacazette together, excuse me, my throat's still a bit hoarse from yesterday, wasn't going to allow that to happen. Anyway, Leeds. I felt we spoke last week about the fact that actually they were a little bit more pragmatic when they won at the Etihad last year. And where they got slapped around, you would have thought that they would ease up a little bit against Arsenal. But no, same way of playing. We're going to chase you all over the shop, man to man. We're going to basically leave Luke Ayling central on his own. And the one thing Arsenal do really well is they exploit space well. If you think of the 2 games this year where teams have really opened up against them, Saturday against Leeds and the Tottenham game where Nuno played this, I don't know what that was, 4-0-6 formation. We was like, we're not going to pass the ball into midfield. We're going to get everyone forward as quickly as possible. And Arsenal just broke on Tottenham so many times. So when teams do, because we speak on game state a lot with Arsenal, we say, look, when they go ahead, they're quite happy to kind of cede possession and sit behind the ball. But if teams make it that obvious for Arsenal, obviously go and kill you. They've got good players. People like Saka, Odegaard and Martinelli don't want to sit behind the ball, really. They want to go and exploit space. And in Saka and Martinelli, they're 2 players who are really good at coming off the flanks. Martinelli looks an absolutely brilliant option right now at 5.3.
He's been a fringe breakthrough asset for so long for Arsenal. Is highly, highly thought of by all Arsenal fans that I know are always Martinelli. And he's now started, I think it's 6 in a row that he started, or he started 5.
No, it's not that many. It's basically since the substitute appearance against Newcastle.
Started 5, and it started all the games since Newcastle. But in that 5.5 games, you're talking 4 goals and 2 assists.
If people want to go and buy Martinelli at the weekend, I don't mind, but let the price rises go, please. Please just let it go. Could be a good option. I tell you what I have with him. I have the sense of feeling that when he gets in positions, he'll take the chances and he'll score goals. I'm just not convinced. My feeling going into the weekend was I couldn't be sure who was going to play between him and Smith Rowe. Really wasn't sure
that's
at all.
That's a concern. But then Smith Rowe and Odegaard could interchange potentially. Maybe Saka's the safest bet of the 4 of them.
Saka's the safest bet. I think Odegaard is reasonable to consider as well because his value, but I think now
5.5 million is cheap.
You would gamble Martinelli rather than Odegaard. There's much more explosiveness potentially in Martinelli. Saka is the safest pick in terms of, unless he's going to get rested, he's definitely 100% nailed in that team. Whereas the other 3, I'm not certain they are. What we have, of course, seen with Arteta though previously is players in good run of forms will keep the shirt. Yeah. Nuno Tavares was keeping Kieran Tierney out the team week on week, and we kept saying, what's going on here? Well, it was just simply that Tavares was playing really well. Now, Tierney's got the shirt back. Tavares suddenly is not getting a look in again. So while Martinelli's in form and returning, there is no suggestion that he's not going to play games. Now, Arsenal have it, I think, if the games in game week 20 go ahead, have it worse than most. Because they are at 12:30 on Tuesday the 28th.
Yeah.
They play Norwich away on the 26th, and then they play Wolves at 12:30 on the 28th. I don't even know how, to be honest, listen, I hate them, right? I don't even know how that's allowed to happen. That they, and physically, it's not even just 48 hours. It's within 48 hours.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wolves game on the Boxing Day is 12:30 against Watford. I mean, Arsenal should at least be that as well. I go ahead and say it. I don't think that's particularly fair, actually. So with that in mind, there's fair chances there's going to be heavy rotation. So even though we're looking at these Arsenal assets now, does he look at it, if the game in game week 20 goes ahead, could Arteta look at Norwich and go, I'm better off leaving the players out now, aren't I?
Yeah, I'm looking at Arsenal with only Kieran Tierney in mind. I'm going to let the attacking ones go for now, just because of what follows after Norwich, potentially in Wolves and City and Spurs. I don't want to get an attacking asset there now. Having said that, if we see some consistency from the 3 in behind Lacazette and they're playing well, then I'm all for jumping in on one of them because of the value that they offer. And they are, as it stands right now, a top 4 team. I think Arteta's always wanted to kind of build a young squad and a young team, and what he's done with Aubameyang training with the kids now, and he's going to go to Barca in January transfer window and get rid of him. I think it's a case of out of sight, out of mind, creating that siege mentality with the squad that he has and getting any bad eggs out. I don't think Aubameyang's particularly a bad egg. I just don't think he's particularly a good egg.
Have Barcelona decided that because they've got so much financial problems that their way out of it is to buy expensive overage players on high wages? Is this what they've decided?
That's their strategy. Yeah, I mean, it's mental. But yeah,
I've heard Cavani's going to Barcelona.
Mad.
Go and buy some young players, Barcelona. Honestly, that's a whole different podcast. I think Newcastle might look at Aubameyang. Actually,
we'll see.
It would make sense.
Newcastle 0, City 4. Training day.
To laugh at Guardiola's comment, didn't it? I mean, I only saw the first half, and then I went to Tottenham. And I didn't particularly disagree. I thought they had some really sloppy moments in the first half, but Guardiola goes, didn't play well. Won 4-0. Fuck off, mate. We all feel better now. You just won 11-0 over the last 2 game weeks.
Do you like? I like Eddie Howe.
Yeah, there's nothing dislikable about Eddie Howe or Eddie Hearn, as my wife would tell you.
But when I look at, I mean, I feel a bit of pain, I feel his pain on the touchlines watching Newcastle last couple of games. Like, he knows it doesn't feel like they are doing what he wants them to do. It feels like he's got this constipated look of pain on his face when he's on the touchlines at the moment. I feel a bit for him, but then you can turn up and get slapped easily at City away. I mean, but there was at home for them, City away, but still.
The goals, it wasn't a 4-0 game, in fact. Not that Newcastle ever really looked like they were going to score by the kind of Wilson header.
But also City.
Maybe the Hayden one in the first half as well.
City weren't out of second gear.
No, there is that. I mean, you don't help when you give.
They didn't have the same intensity that they did against Leeds, like on Monday, for example.
You give Man City a free goal to start the game. I mean, Dubravka kicks it out for a corner. Then from the corner, what goes on between Clark and Dubravka? I mean, you could clearly see Dubravka say, "I didn't say stop." Although you wouldn't say stop, you'd say keepers. I don't know any goalkeeper ever that's not gone keepers when they're calling for something. Yeah. Keepers.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're saying something like stop anyway, I don't know what that is as a coded message to teammates. Seems really weird to me. Keepers is a global language as far as I'm concerned. Unless it's something else in Spanish, Italian, etc., or Slovenian or whatever Dubravka speaks. But Clark must have heard something. He must have.
I want to know, James, who are the 64% now of people that don't own Cancelo?
They are.
I expected him to be at least 50%.
64% of dead teams. I'm sure after this weekend just gone, there's loads more people gone, I ain't fucking playing FPL anymore. Not that. What a brilliant player he is. I mean, you'd make a strong case to say that if it wasn't for the exploits of Mo Salah this season, Cancelo would probably be in the running for player of the year.
Yep.
Right be in the running. He's definitely been City's outstanding player across the whole year as far as I'm concerned. Although, in fairness, shout out to Bernardo Silva as well. Super player.
It was first goal of the season, though.
I know, but that goal's been coming every week forever, mate. And as we already said, those who captain, really well done. It's a gutsy play. Like it. I think the majority of us just can't quite bring ourselves to captain a defender. Doesn't feel right, but then Trent outscored Mo Salah again yesterday. So I think particularly in the case of those two players, Cancelo, Trent, once Salah goes to AFCON, if it goes ahead, we've got to start thinking about this as a serious idea. I mean, do we look, if the game with 20 fixtures go ahead, do we look at Cancelo away at Brentford? If Salah plays against Leeds and has then got Leicester 2 days later, does he even play? I would say that's questionable. And do we look at Cancelo with an extra day's break because they're not scheduled to play till the Wednesday with Brentford away. The other one I can see looking ahead is game week 23, which Salah is highly likely to still be away for, which is when Liverpool go to Crystal Palace. What would you say, Jota versus Palace away, or Cancelo away to Southampton, or Trent away to Palace? There's probably the 3 choices. Like Tottenham go to Chelsea. Arsenal got Burnley at home, but I don't want to be captain.
No, that's the kind of game where you don't trust Arsenal, almost, to be fair.
Leeds have got Newcastle at home, and it's Watford who are the team that's got Norwich. Emmanuel Dennis.
Possibly.
Oh, no, he'd be at the AFCON as well.
Oh,
possibly.
true.
But yeah, where would you go with that? Jota or Trent away to Palace, or Cancelo away to Southampton?
I'd go Cancelo, because Palace are not mugs. I'd look at it and I'd say there's more likelihood of City going off at Southampton than Liverpool going off at Palace.
I think that's probably where I'd be at with that as well in terms of game week 23. What you've got with that as well is obviously afterwards is meant to be the international break, which may get canned from a Premier League perspective, and the midweek before is what's scheduled for the FA Cup third round replays. If there aren't Premier League fixtures before and afterwards, you would have to say that for that Southampton fixture, Cancelo is absolutely nailed.
Yeah,
and therefore it'd be interesting when it comes around, I think.
Yeah. Wolves 0, Chelsea 0.
No. We can't move on without talking about the penalty. Newcastle fans do their nuts in. 100% that's a penalty, and I don't.
Yep.
We're going to talk about more refereeing decisions, I'm sure, in a minute. There is no world where that's not a penalty.
It wiped him out.
I don't get it. Well, I do get it. Their explanation was that Cancelo was coming away with the ball.
Yeah.
Sorry, if Ederson had punched him in the face, is it still not a penalty? This fucking absurd logic.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. I'm with you completely.
So yeah,
it wiped him out.
In Newcastle's case, in terms of what's to come, we know we'll cover it very quickly because it's not really an FPL kind of point of view. But from when the Premier League is ongoing in terms of once the transfer window's open. So game week 21's New Year's Day. Obviously, they could end up with their Everton fixture now going after the Southampton away fixture. But from game week 22, which is mid-January, when you would think they've got players in the door by then, Watford at home, Leeds away, Everton at home, Villa at home. It's another brilliant little 4 fixtures for them, like what they had kind of between 12 and 15. They didn't get the points on the board they would have hoped in that period. They only got 5. They can't afford to only take 5 again from those 4. They need to be looking at more like 8 or 9. Otherwise, curtains.
Yeah. Wolves 0, Chelsea 0. I predicted a draw in this just because I thought give Wolves a bit of credit, but I did predict 1-1 as opposed to 0-0. And I didn't watch this. I had eyes on Newcastle City, but I'll take Bradley Parker's opinion on it. He said it was a fairly even game. Wolves were better in the first, Chelsea in the second, and a draw probably about right, and move on. Chelsea concerned now? I mean, this could, with Liverpool drawing, Chelsea drawing, is this the weekend where we say City have finally stamped themselves as clear favourites now to go on and win the league?
Yeah. I think once you're behind City, you're in a very dangerous place.
And it's 4 points now, so it's more than a game's worth of clawback.
The thing is as well, City and Liverpool are the 2 teams you really feel can be like a juggernaut in terms of go and win 11, 12 games in a row or something like that. So if City get in that head of steam, like even when you draw a game like Chelsea did yesterday, it feels like, 6 points to Man City, it actually is massive.
Huge.
The difference between Chelsea and City is currently now the same as the difference between Chelsea and Arsenal, by the way. And they have played the same amount of games. All 4 of them teams have played 18. So, coming up, you look at Chelsea, obviously got Liverpool at home in 21, Man City away in 22. Like, if you lose those 2 games, you are finished. You can't be 12 points behind. You get to double figures behind Man City, it's good night. And you look at City's fixtures, Leicester at home, Brentford away. You look at them and you think, okay, put me another 6 on the board. Arsenal away is obviously challenging at the moment on New Year's Day. Then it's Chelsea at home. Now, City take 12 points from them 4 games. And then afterwards, it's Southampton, Brentford, Norwich, Tottenham at home, Everton away, Man United at home, Palace, Brighton, Burnley. That's over. You would think it would be over because during that stretch, they look like they could go off big.
Any players from either of these clubs from an FPL point of view on radar?
For Newcastle, no, but I think
Wolves.
We should be. Oh, fuck, we've moved right on, haven't we? Sorry, I was still talking about Man City. Yeah, all of them, mate. All of them. We didn't talk about Phil Foden not getting left out.
Benched.
So many people captained him. Yeah, I could see the logic. It's fine. Wolves, yes, there has to be, because this defensive record is now not a joke.
Yeah,
and we've just seen them over the last few weeks play Chelsea, Man City, and Liverpool and concede 2 goals. It's extremely impressive. So, even your Connor Cody's and stuff, still getting you 2 points in these games. So I think like Connor Cody at 4.5 and Max Kilman at 4.5, great. Slight preference for Cody, although they're both absolutely nailed at the moment. I don't think I could justify the extra 0.5 for Roman Saiz. It's a shame that Ray and Aït-Nouri got injured at 4.3. Bradley said that even Mark Howe played well yesterday against Chelsea, which did make my chin drop a little bit. So that's off the table again now. Samado is, I think the kids would call him a fraud. I mean, bottom line is he's got less points than Kilman, Cody, or Saiz. So I don't know why he flatters to deceive in terms of his attacking output. So he's not worth paying the extra. Between Saiz and Samado, I paid 0.2 extra for Saiz because a big threat from set pieces and stuff. Connor Cody, I think, and Kilman, really interesting. And it's Watford at home next. So if you're looking for something to plug the gap, yeah, possibly. I'm looking at this weekend. I don't really fancy Dennis and King to do anything at Wolves, personally.
No.
We've got Arsenal and Manchester United away afterwards, which are obviously difficult fixtures. Then they come into the reverse of what they had at the start of the season. Game week 22 to 32 is absolutely blinding for Wolves. Absolutely brilliant. Long stretch of fixtures in there where, okay, yes, they've got Arsenal at home. They have away games at Tottenham and West Ham. But otherwise, it's a really, really good stretch of fixtures. And I think, yeah, Wolves' defensive assets should be on radar. And the keeper, Jose Sarr, is he the highest scoring keeper in the game now?
He is, yeah.
I mean, I don't regret selling him with the fixtures that they were coming into. He did quite well for me, though, obviously. He's an option. And just by virtue of being the highest scoring keeper, there'll be interest.
Yeah, for sure.
No doubt about it.
If we're looking for somewhere to come off David De Gea when their run ends, Jose Sarr might be.
I'm just not sure. For those who are going in and looking for a keeper at that price, although their fixtures are great, I think the immediate prospect of David De Gea at basically the same price is more interesting, in my opinion. That's the way I went. And obviously, Ramsdale owners are not going to move. And you've obviously got to compete against the effective ownership of Arsenal clean sheets at the moment as well. So that's, I think at the moment, you would still go to Gea or Ramsdale because of Wolves' fixtures at Arsenal at United.
You can pick up a defender for 4.5 rather than the 5.1, 5.2 at Sarr.
Come game with 22, it might be a different conversation. There also, the other interesting thing with Wolves is they're one of only 5 teams who currently don't have a game to schedule to rearrange. You've also got Leeds, Liverpool, Manchester City, Newcastle, and Wolves are the only teams that with something that hasn't been postponed yet, if we include Chelsea's Club World Cup fixtures, postponed from 24 and 25. And that's a little off-putting because I think you do begin to think doubles could get thrown in anywhere here. Now, obviously, if all a game with 20 moves, like we said, then that'll create a double for everyone for sure. But that's a little off-putting. I think that small little thing makes you want to look at someone else. You compare that to, say, with Burnley. And Burnley are coming into a tough run of fixtures. Probably not a great example. But Burnley have now got like 3 games to rearrange. Brighton have now got 3 games to rearrange. Tottenham have assets and obviously look better defensively under Antonio Conte, although there were still some sloppy moments yesterday. Tottenham have 3 games to rearrange versus Wolves. And you've got people like Dyer and Davis. Yes, they're worth considering. And I think that might give the Tottenham players the edge over the Wolves players, for example. It's just that knowledge of going, that double could drop. Whereas for Wolves, it isn't there at the moment. Chelsea, no. This is, for me, it's more about selling, I think, at this stage. So I've only got Reece James. My strategy at the moment. You can, but my strategy is to sell him in game week 21 as it stands now. At that point, once you've gone past Villa away and Brighton at home, then I'm potentially selling him ahead of Liverpool at home, Man City away, Tottenham at home, blank.
Agreed.
So obviously, look, that's really dependent on what's going to happen with the fixtures and stuff. But I would begin to be thinking about moving on Chelsea assets. There's a decision to be made that you can keep players like Rudiger if you're up massive value, and obviously Reece James as well. But with the way it's going, you have to consider, do you really want to? If they're not potentially going to have fixtures thrown in and the fixtures that they've got, it's really unclear. So I think FPL managers need to be on their toes with Chelsea assets. In terms of buying new, I think the moment's gone, actually. Mason Mount, I'm not massively keen on because they've got basically 5 players who can fight for 2 positions behind the front man. Admittedly, that's 3 basically at the moment until Lukaku comes back. Defensively, yes, Thiago Silva, Rudiger, Reece James, Marcos Alonso, all very good. Am I interested in buying them new now? No, I would be thinking more about the other way. Just briefly on the fact the game wasn't postponed.
No.
I think what happened here was, and we obviously don't quite know what sort of team that Aston Villa would have put out. So it's difficult to say that Villa wouldn't have had a team that looked nearly as strong as their original team. But the Chelsea 11 dropped, and I think the majority reaction from most people was, that's why your game's on, because your team still looks pretty strong. Now, none of us are privy to what's going on behind the scenes. I think Thomas Tuchel spoke really well about, obviously, players sharing the coach, players sharing, obviously, eating together. One of the things I spoke to some of the patrons about after the Villa Burnley postponement was what happens to, like the Burnley Watford postponement, what happens to like the Watford players who were in Burnley? Do they travel back with their teammates with COVID, like on a coach or on a flight, or do they all get bundled in a cab from Burnley to Hertfordshire or something? Like, what happens there? It's a bit of a mess. So I can understand the Chelsea frustration. I think they've looked at it and gone, your team's still all right. Whether that's right or wrong, I don't know, because we don't know all of the circumstances from the games that's been postponed. That's part of the reason why this meeting's going on today as well, is to get some clarity. Like, in which situation can you or can't you have a game of football postponed? Chelsea will feel aggrieved, like I'm sure probably Liverpool do, with the fact the Tottenham game went on as well. There's also, it's worth mentioning that, again, as I've described to you, the rearrangement for the European clubs is tough. Those are the ones the Premier League really don't be losing.
I heard
games with the European clubs.
I must. It was rumours, because we don't know for sure, that Norwich only had 3 cases of COVID, and so there was a bit of why with us getting pissed when they've only got 3 cases. But hopefully, maybe we'll get more clarity today in terms of what is and isn't true with various clubs.
Possibly
Liverpool
so.
too?
In the case of Norwich, it was. I mean, Leeds, arguably. I mean, nobody's been worse hit than Leeds, I don't think, with the amount of injuries they've got. From a Norwich perspective, it was obviously lingering, and I think they took an early decision, which was the right thing to do, rather than let it get to Saturday and the fans travel again. I think they made the right decision to call the game off, to be perfectly honest with you.
Spurs 2, Liverpool 2. The question on a lot of people's lips is going to be penalty or no penalty. Not penalty, red card or no red card. Sorry, getting ahead of myself. I thought it was a red card, I'll be honest with you. And then...
What a groundbreaking opinion, Suj.
The second time I kind of looked at it again, the only thing that stops it being a red card is his second leg, the one that he doesn't tackle with, isn't outstretched, right? He tackles with one leg, not 2 legs. So the only reason that it would not be is maybe because the second leg is grounded, although it's not grounded, but it's not off the ground at a height. But his first leg is shin height. So it's one of those. But I don't know. I think it's a distraction is what I'd say, red card or no red card, as a topic of conversation for what in some ways was a bit of a car crash of a game.
Did you watch the game?
Yeah.
Did you enjoy the game?
Oh, yeah. But I think I was like, so firstly, I was like, why are Liverpool so not Liverpool-y?
Well, there's an explanation for that.
And obviously they lost players.
It's absolutely a shame in the first instance, by the way, because I've had people say to me that's the best game I've watched, like, in the whole of 2021. It's certainly the best game I've been at, definitely by a country mile. Yeah. It was a bit of an emotional roller coaster going through the game. It was a cracking game, I thought. It's a shame that afterwards people aren't talking about the football and the brilliant spectacle that 2 teams under difficult circumstances managed to put on, and are talking about refereeing decisions. So I want to get that out the way really, really quickly. There is no world where that's not a red card for Harry Kane. No world, 100% it's a red card.
Yeah, I suppose for me it's more like it's if Robertson's is a red, Kane's is a red, and if Robertson's is a yellow, Kane's is yellow. It's like this. It's not even about what's red and what's not. It's the consistency is the problem, right?
The only difference with this one is like the Kane and Robertson tackles aren't really comparable in the sense that they're completely different. I mean, even Jurgen Klopp's come out and said, "Yeah, look, Robertson deserved to get sent off." I don't think.
And Robert said himself he deserves to get sent off.
I mean, there's swiping players and there's swiping players. It was literally right below me, and at the time I was like, "That's over the top in terms of not over the top, but it's over the top in terms of."
Excessive.
But then Kane's had the same. There's one clear thing that defines 100% that Harry Kane's is a red card, and that's that he's out of control. Liverpool fans will remember this. A red card. This is when I first really learned this. Was Joe Cole's debut for Liverpool was a game against Arsenal. I can't remember what year. We're going back to 2011, something like that.
Yeah, was it in stoppage time he got sent off?
Right at the end of the first half, actually, yeah. Okay. And he got sent off for a tackle, I think, on Laurent Koscielny right by the bar line. And in terms of the contact between that Joe Cole tackle and Harry Kane's, quite similar. Joe Cole's was arguably a little bit worse. But what decided it completely was the fact that Joe Cole had no control of what he was doing and therefore was completely endangering an opponent. Because when he went in and made that tackle, Koscielny's going to go and clear the ball, and Joe Cole moved his head away. He's not looking at what he's doing. Therefore, you've not got control. And Kane does the same. Kane does the same because as obviously he's coming into Robertson, he thinks, fucking hell, Robertson's going to smash the ball at my face here. So he turns his head away. And at that point, he's not in any control of what he's doing. Hence, his leg comes up. I don't think he meant to do him. I don't think Joe Cole meant to do Koscielny back in that game 10 years ago. But therefore, you've completely endangered the opponent. And at that point, and the way the contact, if Robertson doesn't leap off the ground, I mean, he's in big trouble, right? Majority of people around me didn't think it was a foul. And I do have a little bit of sympathy with Paul Tierney, the referee, in the Kane challenge, because Tierney's behind Kane and probably doesn't know, because the ball goes obviously towards the touchline. Probably doesn't know
contact or no contact,
whether
how clean it is,
whether Kane's got a bit of the ball, whether it's hit his bum or I think it hit his hand, but probably it's thinking, well, the ball has gone that way. How bad can it be? And his view is probably obstructed a little bit. What's unforgivable is Chris Kavanagh, who is one of the few referees that I praised a little bit over the last couple of years, doesn't tell him, go and look at the monitor.
I think that's the biggest frustration is why not say, have a look? It's the inconsistency is always the biggest thing that is the bugbear with refereeing is inconsistency. And it's a shame because it was a cracking end-to-end game of football. I watched the first half intensely, the second half less intensely, but I felt like I didn't understand why Liverpool were letting you get in behind so much, like playing such a high line. And Konate, I listened to a few people say at the end of it, they thought he'd had a half decent game. I wasn't particularly impressed by him.
Jota was a penalty, by the way, as well. And that's the end of the refereeing decisions. We don't need to talk about it anymore. Everything else, as far as I'm concerned, was the Robertson red card was right. The no Dele Alli penalty was right. Technically, by law, though it's a bit awkward, Liverpool's second goal was right to stand. That's the end of it. Tottenham had clear strategy, made you smile on my face from Tottenham having a clear strategy in the game of football. It was really interesting to see the contrasting styles between the two teams. In obviously Liverpool coming with their domination, their 100-mile-an-hour attitude, and Tottenham just setting traps. And in the first half particularly, Tottenham set traps that Liverpool just could not deal with, and then evolved in the second half to a slightly different strategy. So in the first half, basically, the playing two up fronts, Tottenham played differences and played 5-3-2 rather than 3-4-2-1. And Sonny played right up front with Harry Kane. They played as a proper pair. So they set traps where basically Liverpool were leaving themselves, because the fullbacks go so high, they were leaving themselves with Matip and Konate 1v1 each against Kane and Son. Klopp, I can tell you, and I don't know if this was visible on the TV because I haven't watched the game back, was absolutely losing his mind in the first half with Liverpool's midfield and the lack of protection in front. Tyler Morton looks a really good young player on the ball. In a game circumstance like that, not ready.
Agreed.
Not ready. What yesterday highlighted is, and this is a big deal for Liverpool's title challenge, they cannot afford to be missing key players because they will drop points.
It's exactly that, right? Had Henderson, Thiago been fit, it would have been a different game of football because they're so much more experienced.
They're not even neither of them are even the big one in midfield. The big one's Fabinho. Massive, because Fabinho would have sat in front of that too and put his body in and shielded in front of them. Whereas Tyler Morton looks like, it run me a bit of Gilmore, like good deep line player, can spread the ball lovely and stuff. But when Tottenham were breaking, and obviously there's him sitting in front of the back too, because the fullbacks are naturally so high, it's the way Liverpool play. Like it's not even a big criticism of Morton, because I felt like he was a bit exposed by Milner and Keita as well, who at points could have said, look, just drop into a pivot, or we'll let Keita go, and then you create a box of 4 that surrounds Kane and Son. There were so many different things that Liverpool could do to fix the problem. They didn't.
Yeah, this is why I wanted to call him almost naive. It felt stupid. Like, I was like, Liverpool, this is not Liverpool. The solidity that you expect from them wasn't there.
So what you've got happening is Liverpool are still creating chances.
Which they will.
Liverpool first 5-10 minutes were great, and then Tottenham had a period where it could have been 3-0, just murdering them on the counter attack so many times. And we obviously paid the price for not finishing our chances. To be fair, Liverpool then dominated the latter part of the first half and had more chances. Then, obviously, by the time the second half comes around, Liverpool clocked the problem. So, okay. But they still want to play a high line, but it's not quite as high. When they're attacking, they're putting up more shields that's got more resistance to natural counterattacks. Tottenham didn't have the counterattacks in the second half that they did in the first half. In the second half, Tottenham did it a bit differently because Liverpool gave a bit more protection to the 2 centre-backs, and they probably sat a few yards deeper as well. I'll say probably they did. But then what that allowed Tottenham to do was have runners from midfield, and Dele Alli, who the patrons will know I've said finished. It was really good yesterday. And his run inside Trent Alexander-Arnold, Tottenham were looking for that ball all the time, second half, looking for a direct ball over the top. It created 2 clear chances, one the claimed penalty before Liverpool's second goal, and obviously the one where Ali squared it for Harry Kane as well. The other one they were looking for, big diagonal into Ryan Sessegnon, I thought had a good game as well, constantly looking to expose Trent Alexander-Arnold over the top. So I like that Tottenham had variance in their play within a tactical setup. They adapted to what Liverpool did and still maintained a threat in the game as well. Shout out to Harry Winks, another player many Tottenham fans want to get rid of. What have I said to you about Harry Winks over the last couple of years, Suj?
No pace.
Well, no, that's one problem. He lacks concentration in terms of off the ball runners defensively. But I told you, he's been brainwashed. Brainwashed to play negative football and not play forward passes. The amount of forward passes he played between the lines yesterday, really good. Always got his head up. He looked like this busy player that was what got him obviously into the England team a couple of years ago. Really good performance from him. And it was nice to have fringe players like Winks, Ali and Ryan Sessegnon play well for Tottenham yesterday. Now, Liverpool obviously had key players missing as well. You take Van Dijk, Fabinho and Henderson out that spine. That's a really big deal and a big blow for them. And obviously, Thiago as well just keeps the ball for fun and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was obviously Van Dijk was obviously a massive miss. Of course, he's a level above Matip and Konate. But I think the biggest miss was Fabinho, actually. Fabinho. And also Henderson as well. The one thing Henderson, as soon as I saw Henderson was probably out, I knew 100% by necessity it happened anyway. But irrespective of others, I knew Milner would play. Why do I know Milner would play? Because natural leadership on the football pitch. That gave Liverpool so many problems playing without Henderson last year because he drives them on. And Henderson, I think, fixes tactical problems for Liverpool on the football pitch. Milner didn't fix the problem yesterday. That's why Klopp, honestly, again, I don't know if it came across in the TV coverage, was losing his mind in that first half. He was panicking. And his panic just brought on more panic for the players on the pitch as well. Eventually, they fixed the problem, but then Tottenham exposed issues in different ways. Listen, it was a great game of football. Tottenham had a higher XG, Suj, in that game. Not higher. They had nearly as big an XG in the game yesterday than they had in all of August and September, which is 6 games.
It's mad.
So in terms of creating chances yesterday, really good. You're never going to completely limit Liverpool because they've obviously got so much attacking talent and threat. I mean, the front three and the fullbacks, combination-wise, as a five, if you throw the fullbacks in with the front three, it's the best that anyone's got anywhere, really. So, they're going to have chances and stuff. Oh, it was a great game of football. It was a great advert for the league. The irony, of course, is if Harry Kane had been rightly sent off, it would have ruined what we went and saw afterwards. I don't know if there's a little bit of that in the decision-making process. No, a lot of people say, England captain tax and all that. That's probably true as well. But it would have ruined what we then watched afterwards. The decision obviously still would have been to send him off.
Yeah,
should have been the right call.
It's for some people, obviously, watching the spectacle is one thing, but you want to get the right result at the end of the game as well. And that's the other issue that's why right decisions affect the result.
I get the grievance of Liverpool fans because, yes, they should have had a penalty. Tottenham's centre forward should have been sent off as well. I get that. The grievance from our side is we should have taken our fucking chances and won the game.
Yeah, so. And it's when it's in your own control is one thing. Liverpool, people have tripled up and have and know about their assets. You guys have a semi-decent run now with Palace, Southampton, Watford, and then you've got your derby against Arsenal and Chelsea, which is difficult, but then Southampton. Are you going to bother?
Spurs?
Yeah.
Yeah, possibly. Possibly. And there's two reasons for that. One is what I've said to you about the doubles. We've actually just got breaking news I've seen come through as well, Suj, that the Tottenham are out of the Europa Conference League. Decision we suspected. Rennes have been awarded the tie, so Tottenham are out of Europe. So that puts less pressure on the rearrangement of games, but you are still looking at it and going, well, there's 3 double game weeks coming for Tottenham in all likelihood. And that possibly, I think, in the psyche with Tottenham are definitely going to be better defensively with Conte, and it's fairly clear, possibly does give the advantage to the likes of Ben Davies or Eric Dyer over like Wolves players, for example, at the moment. And Heung-min Son's right on radar. It has to be. Purely as well, I look at game week 21 when Salah goes to Chelsea, and I really consider that I want to take him on. I think if game week 20 gets postponed, excuse me, and therefore Liverpool's trip to Leicester is off, I will strongly consider selling Mo Salah after the Leeds game. Because I look at him then going, right, I can take him on against Chelsea. Then he's going to miss 2 games for AFCON. It could be that the Leicester game as a double lands in there as well and he won't be available. And therefore, it becomes expendable. For me, it's too much money to hold back to know that he could miss. Yeah, he's going to miss 2 game weeks, of which one might be a double game week as well, right? I mean, it's going to be very difficult to have, say, Salah, Ronaldo and Son, for example, and still have a good rest of the team. Whereas at the moment, we're all looking at it and going, well, if we don't have Ronaldo, because we've got Salah, and there's captainable options in the likes of Cancelo, Trent, and even Jota at the moment, that we don't need the likes of Ronaldo and Son. But I do look at that game with 21 and see City at Arsenal, Liverpool at Chelsea. Obviously, Salah would be available. The one that stands out as interesting from the other clubs is Tottenham at Watford.
Yeah.
And I've really got my eyes on Sonny. I don't know, the system that we played yesterday, for me, is a tactical setup specifically for Liverpool. But you can still play the 2 up front against so-called weaker opposition and just play very differently. And that's quite obvious in terms of the position of the 2 wing backs. So Tottenham played a back 5 yesterday. It wasn't a back 3, it was a back 5. Now, just quite simply, you change that to higher starting positions of the wing backs, then you can still play the 2 up front against the weaker sides. And I wonder if Conte now wants to go that way. There was a lot of thought that he might. There's certain midfielders in the club, Ali and Ndombele and Lo Celso. I think Conte's made the decision that he can't play them in a 2. He can only play them in a 3. And he also spoke yesterday at length in terms of Harry Winks with 2 partners can play more of a deeper lying role and be creative from that position. So the 3 in midfield might stick, and then it's competition for places. Whereas I think if it's only going to be 2 in there in a 3-4-2-1, it will go back to Højbjerg and Skip, basically. So it possibly gives a bit more flexibility, but then how do you get people like Lucas and Bergwijn in the team? You can't. unless they're going to play for Son or Kane, which they're not going to. So you're using them as impact players. Like he changed, Lucas basically went and played in midfield when he came on yesterday and picked up similar positions to what Dele was doing. So Sonny, not Kane, it's not justifiable with the money, but Sonny, listen, you know that one goal can be 10, 11 points with him. Yes, and he's capable in any game, in the biggest games. We've seen that now. Defensively, I've had a few people asking me about Dyer or Davis, which, unlike the joke of kind of 18 months ago, is a serious conversation at the moment. Now, one thing to be aware of is Tottenham are likely to make some movement in the transfer market in January. So in terms of which one's more secure, it's probably Dyer. Purely on if Tottenham buy a left-sided centre-back of quality, he's likely to play instead of Ben Davis. Whereas if Tottenham buy another quality centre-back, unless it is a natural, someone of kind of Thiago Silva's ilk, if you will, in terms of positioning, then I think Dyer stays in the team, even if it meant he moved to the right-sided centre-back at the moment until Romero comes back there. So Dyer is a little bit safer, but owning Ben Davis is a lot more fun because of the underlapping runs, which only happens on Tottenham's left-hand side. It doesn't happen on the right-hand side. So it would probably still be Davis for me at the moment, but just a consciousness of what Tottenham do in the transfer market could have a big impact going forward. Davis is the only left footer of those who can play centre-back, so it gives him a major advantage. But Dyer's role in the team is absolutely critical at the moment, both defensively in terms of leadership and his distribution from that position as well. For Liverpool, unfortunately, most of us can't get Tsimikas at 3.7 million.
No.
Who presumably, if the Liverpool-Leicester Cup game this midweek goes ahead, will then play at home to Leeds and away to Chelsea. Now, my take on it would be that that's not worth it because the second game's Chelsea away anyway. So, okay, great, get him in for Leeds. He's obviously going to fly up in value as a 3.7 million Liverpool defender because if anybody hasn't got free Liverpool, come the weekend, they probably are buying Tsimikas for the one game. Save a little bit of money, fine, leave him for a bit, knowing as well that you could move Salah in a couple of weeks to block you off the treble Liverpool. You could go, if you haven't got Jota, for example, you can go Salah to Jota, leave the money till Salah's back, and then go back to Salah, for example, if you're already sitting there with Trent. So those without are obviously going to strongly consider Tsimikas, even though it's really short term. The ideal solution for those who want to buy him is that the Liverpool-Leicester Cup game would be off. And the Leicester League game would be off as well. And then you could be looking at Leeds at home, Chelsea away and Brentford at home, which would look a lot better as a free game combination then. Actually, it wouldn't be the Brentford game, I'll tell a lie, because it's FA Cup before that. So whichever way it works, it's probably only going to be 2 league games. So I'm certainly not going to go, I'm not going to sell Trent for Tsimikas, am I? Great, he's 4.5 million cheaper, but he's so short term.
Never sell Trent is a simple philosophy. I mean, his volleyed cross, it's just everything about it.
Was it a shot? Do you think it was a shot?
Don't know. I
think it might have been a shot, in fairness.
Do you reckon?
Yeah, but the technique of him is phenomenal. He had one in the first half. We crossed first time on the volley, and it's like, oh God.
Yeah, I think that's the one I'm talking about. Not the other. Oh, that's the cross, which was a volley, is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Not the other shot.
I thought Sessegnon did as well as he could against the two of them. Well as he could, and Dele give him a little bit of protection on that side as well. Anybody who comes up against Salah and Trent, if you switch off, you're in so much trouble. And it's mainly credit to Ryan Sessegnon that Salah had his quietest game in a long time. It was never really a moment in the game that you thought Salah was going to score from what I can remember, to be honest. That's not to say Salah played badly, but we should sell him, shouldn't we? One blank. Who is this FPL fraud? I think it's a serious consideration for people, though. Obviously not this week, but after Leeds, by the weekend, we might have some more information. I do think this could be the last week of people, including us, I think, at the moment, Suj, are in a perma-cap phase at the moment. I do think this is the last weekend. And I think afterwards, one way or the other, the debate really begins. And it's interesting. I really hope for the game that he goes to the AFCON and the tournament goes ahead. I think that's good for the game to just mix it up a little bit. If we have loads of teams that have doubles in the period that he's away as well, then people got to seriously think about what they're doing. For me, that's too much money to hold and say, oh, I bought him at 12.5. I'm not selling him. Lose a 0.3 and buy him back at 12.8, 12.9 or whatever. So I think the majority of shrewd players, if he goes to AFCON, I think will sell him.
Yeah. Do you want to give the listeners a rundown of what content we have for the rest this week? And I'm going to pick out a handful of questions, James, from the Twitter questions, and I'm going to pick some Christmassy ones.
Okay, cool. People's poll vote is live till round about 6, 7 p.m. tonight. I don't know the exact time. There's 3 options for your podcast tomorrow. Do you know what they are, Suj?
I haven't seen yet, James.
You can either vote for a closer look at the career of Aguero, the great career of Sergio Aguero. You can also vote for this interesting sponsorship deal that's been struck by the Premier League, where basically Newcastle can now go and have sponsorship deals with Saudi Arabia and stuff if they want to. But the Premier League are going to check that it's basically done over fair market value.
Okay.
Or you can vote for something that's a conversation that's quite dear to my heart at the moment, which is the conversation around the Y word and whether Tottenham fans should stop using it. Okay. Wednesday's podcast, if that don't win the vote, by the way, we're definitely doing it on Patreon. Sky podcast on Wednesday. Thursday's Clash of Correspondence is West Ham versus Southampton with Chris Stone and Matt Samuel. Friday, my Ask James stream will be back. Our Patreon podcast this week for all patrons. Q&A today. We're going to do the quiz tomorrow, Suj. Wednesday is going to be taking a closer look at the current state of women's football in England. Thursday, we're going to hold Tottenham for Thursday. So touch wood, we can take in Wednesday night's Carabao Cup tie between our two teams. One of us is going to be in a good mood. One of us is going to be in a bad mood. Unless it's postponed, we might both be in a bad mood. Mm-hmm. And then Friday will be our Game Week 19 preview show. The advanced and intermediate tier videos this week include a look at all of the cues that go in for today's podcast, a video analysis look at Aguero's best goals for Manchester City as well. Talking tactics this week will be on Antonio Conte's Tottenham team news stream Friday and a news roundup on Wednesday.
Sounds good. And I've been through some of these Twitter questions that we've had as well, James. There's some interesting ones. Listeners, if you want that Patreon content, patreon.com/Planet FPL, you get a bump in tier this month as well. So basic level patrons will get all of the intermediate content. A lot of people are going to be spending a lot of time at home cooking and all sorts with Christmas this weekend coming, James. So it's a great time to open yourself up to other stuff to listen to. It'll keep you entertained throughout the festive
That's
period.
The plan.
Right, James. First question coming in from James Nelson. Favorite Christmas song?
Oh my God. Rage Against the Machine.
Simply having a wonderful Christmas time. Paul McCartney. Leave it at that.
Oh, I hate, right? It's like sometimes you think, I'll flick through the music channels. I'll stick something on in the background. It's like since October, everything is like Christmas songs and stuff. Piss off. Even in the office at work, Suj, in there the other week, all playing Christmas songs already.
Yeah.
Get over it. Same shit for like 3 weeks. Oh, James, you're a Scrooge humbug. In the week before, fine. Other than that, no, piss off. So now it's fine. If you want to stick it on in the office, stick it on.
FPL Roberto, as it's this time of year, what's the worst present you've ever received? Merry Christmas.
For Christmas?
I don't think I've had anything particularly bad at Christmas because nowadays we just tell each other what we want, which is pretty funny. My wife bought me a jumper once. It wasn't Christmas. It must have been my birthday, and I didn't like it, and I couldn't hide it on my face. So straight away it was like, "Oh, all right." And then it was like, you don't like it, do you? And I didn't want to lie to her, so I was like, to be honest with you, I mean, it's a nice jumper, but I don't know if it's me. Did you keep the receipt? And that was rubbish.
No, I can't think of anything. The only one I think it wasn't a present as such, but a couple of years ago, we was around my parents for Christmas dinner. Meal comes out, great, lovely, well done, mum, superstar. Me and the wife looking at each other like, it's the fucking pigs in blankets. There's no pigs in blankets. She's only fucking left them going in the oven, hasn't she? Like,
oh no. FPL governor, you got a choice of these four: Terry's chocolate orange, After Eights, Cadbury's roses, or a box of milk tray. I'd probably go the chocolate orange,
Is it?
And I like the chocolate orange to have been in the fridge, because I like hard chocolate. I don't like it soft and mushy. I like to crunch my chocolate.
I'd probably go for the
Terry's
roses.
Chocolate orange in the fridge.
Roses gives me an excuse. I've got to have one of all of them.
Oh dear. And we'll give the last question of the show to Amber Redmond, who's, other than your co-host, of course, who's the most famous person you've ever met? And James, footballers driving past you doesn't count.
I have met Deadly King.
What was he driving past?
He signed his autobiography for me. I've got a picture with him.
Nice.
Yeah, it's got to be Deadly, I suppose. Yeah.
I had dinner with Sir Clive Woodward once.
You told us that story before.
Yeah. I had dinner with Sir Clive, so I guess that's as good as it gets. Because I do like Sir Clive Woodward.
Can we just clarify? This was not like a dinner date talking business. No. There were other people there.
There were probably 150 people in the room.
Clive Woodward was only 30 yards away.
Well, no, I sat across the table from him. So like you got a keynote speaker, and you're like, oh, we're never going to chat to him. Oh shit, he's sitting across the table from me. You do get a little bit of starstruck fan, that kind of behavior. But yeah, it was good. That was the most famous person I think I've ever met properly, other than shake a hand and they move on with their lives. And yeah, we'll ask Andre's question as well, James. Do you have any Christmas traditions, food, things you do, etc.?
Yeah, Boxing Day football.
That's it, but that's not a Christmas Day tradition. And
that's why as well that they're discussing the idea of cancelling game week 20 rather than game week 19. As I said to you on this podcast on Friday, I'm convinced that they're going to let people try and have their Christmas period. And so for the football people, that's Boxing Day and New Year's Day. They also said that this set of fixtures is a farce anyway. If you're going to have them Wednesday, Thursday, we cannot be having footballers playing twice in 48 hours anymore. It's ridiculous. But yeah, the tradition's Boxing Day. That's my favourite thing about Christmas is the next day.
Fantastic. We managed to get through this week's pod, even though there's only 4 games and obviously a lot of uncertainty. But I hope it's been an enjoyable listening.
Is it no interest in FPL questions that we didn't cover?
It's literally like, should I look at Spurs assets now? What do you think of the red card? Literally, time to move off Smith Rowe. It's just stuff that's Spursy.
No one's asking about like Brandon Williams and shit like that now.
Surprisingly, not.
No. Okay, fine.
But stay tuned on all of our channels, whether it's YouTube or a podcast platform that you're listening on. Hit subscribe, because you know that as soon as we get announcements this week, or there is a bit of clarity about what is happening, we'll be recording and we'll be giving you the Planet FPL rundown on it as things unfold. Other than that, get yourselves ready for Christmas. Stay safe, especially if you're in the UK with all of these cases rising, and look after yourselves. Chat for now.
Thanks, everyone. Be nice to each other. Take a break. No need for early transfers.
Well
Cue music, please, man child.